When you buy something that is handmade or artisanally made, you are buying something that was made by a person. So it does feel like there is an exchange between the maker and yourself because it wasn't mass produced. So your purchase is allowing that person to continue that skill or that craft and being able to make a living. Also, generally, when you're buying something that's or handmade or a craft person has made it, you kind of have more of a knowledge of the provenance of the materials and where things come from.
Hang out with Naman Sulaiman.
Over the last decade, people have witnessed a massive shift in how we approach fashion. The fashion industry is now one of the largest polluters in the world. It is estimated that it's responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions, more than international flights and maritime shipping combined. Yet, despite these growing awareness, many consumers still feel stuck in the cycle of buying more, often because affordability and trends continue to drive decision making. At the same time, there is a growing push towards sustainability. Nature inspired textiles, recycling, and ethical production practices are all gaining traction. But what does sustainability actually look like in fashion? And how do we shift from seeing it as a sacrifice to understanding it as a quality upgrade? Which brings us to today's conversation. What if we could frame sustainability as not just a moral choice, but as an improvement in quality, durability, and long term value? I'm Suleiman Haniyef, and my co host is Hainan Pham. And today, I'm joined by Kristen Caron, creative consultant and independent researcher with 25 years of experience in the fashion industry and a decade working in the artisan sector. Welcome to the podcast, Kristen. We're thrilled to have you here.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Totally. Likewise, we're very excited. So, jumping right into the topic, I have a question for you. What is fashion for you?
What is fashion? Oh. I'll try to keep this not so philosophical, but I see it as a way of personal expression, self-expression. I also it's something that everybody uses as well, though. Sometimes, less consciously, some people less consciously than others. It's just a function, something they need to think about when they need to get dressed in the morning to go to their job. They're not really thinking of it necessarily in aesthetic purposes, or from an aesthetic perspective, something really functional for them. And other people, it really is like their canvas. But it's something that everybody, you know, from newborns to, elderly, we all have to get dressed every day.
We have a common friend, Maria Angelica, who's also our supervisor. And she told me that when you guys were having a conversation, you also told that you see the choices that you make for your house, the the sofa that you buy, the shelves is also fashion. Do you still think that way?
Oh yeah, I do. That's great that she recalled that. But yeah, I mean, I kind of see interior decor, home decor. We can say the way that you're decorating your house. I would kind of put those things in a similar category. For people that have, of course, a place to live that they call their own and they're able to decorate. I think you're making some choices. You're having to purchase those things for your home. Obviously, there's things that are necessities in there, but then when it comes to like even small decorations, those are things that you're having to make a choice about for purchasing. And from like a even more practical perspective, many things that you have in your home decor are textiles, which are also used in the fashion industry. So, from a production perspective, you can say that some of those things are, um, they're also things that are created by factory workers or artisans or artists, um, designers, who are also making products, whether they're for whether they're apparel or if they're, blankets or pillows or, wall decor for your home. So yeah, I think I see them as kind of in a similar way.
That is nice. So, what about fast fashion? What is it for you?
Um, I mean, I would say, um, it's something that is generally very inexpensive, cheap. you could say. It's something that maybe when someone's buying it, they're not thinking so much about it too deeply because the price is really low. Um, Generally, I would say it's something that is not the highest of quality, which contributes to it being a really low price. Um, but then also, since I work in the industry too, I think in my perspective, when I think of fast fashion too, there's other elements as well, like the workers who make the products. Of course, whether they're fashion or if they're home decor or something, I think that that is a important component of uh, what is fast fashion or what contributes to something being considered fast fashion.
Uh, did those definitions change for you over time? Because uh, 25 years ago, was there something like fast fashion?
I don't think so. I mean, actually, there probably was, but I don't think that there wasn't so much conversation about it, to be honest. And, when I was thinking about us having this conversation today, I actually recalled something, and I don't know if this was 25 years ago. Um, and, I'm sure that we can look into this or fact check it or whatever, but I do remember owning a pair of pants from Zara, not thinking at all about them being considered fast fashion. And the time of this was before Zara had any stores in the US. So they only had stores in Europe. So imagine, because now we can see them everywhere. But this was definitely, they only had, I mean, they just, I think what I bought, I actually bought it in London or in Paris. So it was a really, really long time ago. And in that time, interestingly, I actually had those specific pair of pants for a really, really long time. And I also remember these pants in particular, they were very fashion, but not too fashion at the time. And I remember somebody that I knew who would not necessarily be a fast fashion buyer. She was somebody who could kind of buy really high end ready to wear and things like that. I remember her complimenting me on these pants. And I felt, oh wow, this is a great choice that I made. And being really happy about that. But I definitely saw Zara as like a European store that you can only buy in Europe. This
And
Yeah.
probably if you
So
have it now, it's,
it was really different then.
yeah. I don't think it would last that long if you buy Zara pants now. Maximum 2-3 years, a couple of
Yeah,
washes.
I have no idea. I think I mean the other thing too that's interesting about this, and I've read articles about it, and it's interesting because I find myself self reflecting when I read so many articles, because there's tons of conversation about fast fashion and what it is and which brands are considered fast fashion. And I can imagine it's very difficult for a customer or the public who isn't involved in the fashion industry or who's not studying fashion or textiles or any of those things, environmentalism, how difficult it could be for them. But I think eh, right now, even if we think about a big brand like, if we think about a brand like Zara, there's other brands who were less expensive and moving much, much faster, that it's almost like the lens has changed, of, if ultra fast fashion, I think that's also that's also a term. So,
Sheen, for
yeah,
example.
yeah. I mean, I think that we I think we would all almost have to reconsider the categories and who's fitting into where. And
Is there
yeah.
like a guideline of knowing that this brand is fast fashion? Or also, just to as a follow-up question, uh, can a brand be not fast fashion, like a normal brand, but produce some items that are still cheap and not that durable? Like, is like, what is the gray area there in the second?
I think that is a really good question, and I don't know if I personally would have the specific guidelines of where if what the numbers would be, whether it's price or if it's how many collections or drops a brand makes per year, per season. I feel like there are definitely metrics on that, and I don't have those. I think for me personally, I kind of just I don't want to say go with my gut, but I kind of can look at something and I'll think, oh, I really like this material. It feels really good. The stitching looks like it's correct for this type of garment or this type of pillow, or the construction seems like it was well thought out. For me, I think I think about those types of things when I'm looking at something. Um, I yeah, it's I feel like it's a little bit gray maybe. But also, yeah, it can also be not very gray, but for me, I operate based on what I know. Um,
I also bet that your gut, with all the experience that you have, is probably a very experienced gut. I would phrase it that way. Uh, but at the same time, now that you mentioned textile, I'm curious if there's a trend of textile that fast fashion uses, so that, like, for example, if it's some cheap cotton or some cheap plastic material, then it's most likely to be fast fashion. Because I bet that if it's some very quality wool, it is very tough to make like too much of those clothes.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that probably go into it. Off of the top of my head, I would say something polyester that wasn't
Mm.
recycled polyester, that was just directly something polyester. And I would also say it kind of depends on how that product was, like the environment that that product was made in. So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. It's not even necessarily just um, when we talk about fast fashion, it's not even just the materials or how quickly something is made or the price. It's the entire infrastructure around it. So we could talk about and maybe we'll talk about this later, the marketing aspects of it, the workers, how many products they're expected to make over a certain amount of time, how they're paid, like part of that is my interest, so I become more focused on that. But I think all of those components kind of come into play and should be considered when we think about something that's
Can we
fast
please talk
fashion.
about it? What is how is the area of the workers right now in this moment?
In this moment, I think it's really challenging. I think anytime when the if the when we think about worker pay, if they're paid appropriately, fairly, if they have a correct working environment too. They're employees, so if they're treated as properly employed people should be treated and paid, and that they have a safe working environment. All of those things would need to come into play, and of course, it depends on where we are in. I guess in the fast fashion ecosystem or umbrella, the ultra fast fashion system, it depends on where we are in that, but I mean, all of those would be, I guess, little flags of what to think about as something being fast fashion or not, apart from the materials and the price and all of those things. So yeah, I mean, any place where there aren't, where workers' rights aren't respected, um, that would contribute.
We didn't discuss this question, so I'm just gonna cut this part. But something that popped in my head: do you think fast fashion kills self-expression?
Um, no, I don't think so, because I do feel like there are people who are like, if I think about myself maybe when I was really, really when I was much younger. And I always really liked fashion, and I would shop at stores. I don't even think they exist anymore. It's absolutely was like definitely a fast fashion store, Forever 21. I don't even know if they have them anymore. Um, but I remember that like shopping at that store gave me the ability to have the components to put together an outfit that I would be excited about. So it was like a tool for me. It wasn't I was using things that I bought there to create my own outfits or the look that I wanted to create mixed with different things, so maybe I would be wearing a vintage jacket that I bought secondhand, and maybe I would have a dress that was fast fashion, and then I would have um like a leather bag or like a bag from my mom's closet. She had really great vintage bags and stuff, and I would have that. So I felt like I was doing a lot of expression that was creative self-expression of what I wanted to do or for how I wanted to look, and I was using fast fashion as a tool as part of the whole thing. That is me. I I'm not sure how it is for other people. I mean, I guess for some people who that's what they're relying on to be able to participate in a trend maybe, and that's not they don't feel like that putting together outfits for self-expression is one of their skill sets or something that they feel like they can do really naturally, especially if they're comparing themselves to someone they see on Instagram. Maybe that's challenging for them. Perhaps, but I don't know if I would say that, and that's only based on my personal experience, just the example I gave of how I think about clothes or how I would use them. It really felt like a tool to me.
I think it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, you have access to all kinds of clothes for much cheaper than it was 20, 30 years ago. But
Right.
at the same time, now everyone has access to these clothes. And uh, like you can go unique. Maybe you can change those clothes, like cut them in a way or style them in a way. But at the same time, in my opinion, I might be wrong as well. When everyone has access to the same clothes, everyone kind of starts dressing up in a similar way.
Yeah.
Uh, might be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that you say this because yesterday I was running some errands, and I live close to a few schools, but a middle school and a high school, actually, like a good sized middle school and high school. And I was out around lunchtime when all the kids are out grabbing lunch. And it was so interesting to me to see, like, I can't help myself, but I love to see like what, the people who are in high school, like what they're wearing is really interesting for me. And I saw these, I was looking at these it's packs of teenagers, there's these packs of girls, packs of boys. Sometimes they're mixed and they're all like just running around and going about their day, running back to class. And I could see like these little packs that they were in, like the girls would have on the exact same outfit. They didn't know what each other was wearing that day, but they did. They had on the same like Ugg boots. They would have on the same kind of jean. Had identical bags in different colors. Their hair was kind of similar. But I would see this like in all these different like, groups of kids just around my neighborhood who were running out. And you know, because I pay attention to that, had an idea about what brands that they were wearing. Um, Obviously, I didn't do a deep inspection and I don't know if any of it was copies, but just based on because I've lived in the neighborhood for a while and I kind of have a sense, I think that a lot of the kids in this neighborhood and who were at this particular school, I feel like they would have a mix in of things. And maybe they would have something that was fast fashion, but a lot of them wear like they would have like genuine Uggs. They would have, jeans from um I don't know, like
Levi's.
just regular like middle ground brands, not
Um,
fast fashion. They're not
Levi's.
fairly overly done in fast fashion, I would say. So I think it depends. I don't know if I could make an arching statement about that. And my example is just in the tiny bit of research I did on the street yesterday.
No, totally. I also we talked about this before. Um, I think fast fashion is very dependent on the country you're living in, because
Yes.
uh, just to quote the survey that uh, we had a question where we asked people how often do they buy fast fashion items, and almost 70% of people that said that it's never, rarely, or sometimes. But then we asked a second question where we asked, which of the following brands have you purchased in the last 12 months? And the top is Zara, Mango, and H&M. And there's also a bit of Shein and Kiabi. So it shows that for some people, they don't see it as fast fashion, even though following all the, let's say, environmental dangers, the cost it takes to produce, the workers, like, it's clearly fast fashion brands, but for people, they still think that no, we're not doing it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I feel like maybe we talked a little bit about this before when I think one of you was saying that in where you're from originally, that let's say Zara is just a regular brand, almost like how I described it when I bought those pants from many, many years ago. I just thought it was like I'm American. I had traveled to Europe. It seemed like it was a European brand, you know? And it didn't necessarily fall into this fast fashion category for me at that time. And I wonder if that is the same, that what we talked about before, is that maybe some people in different countries, depending on their context, they see a place like Zara as a regular boutique store, and
Yeah,
that there are other brands that are much, much, much cheaper and don't have the same kind of marketing around them that
Yeah.
allows them to come to the conclusion that it's not a fast fashion brand, that is just that it's a regular brand. The other thing I would say about Zara, the two, and there have been a few articles about this recently, and I thought that they were really interesting, um, is that um, it does feel like in the way that they're operating their business, that they have been slowly moving up market. I don't know if that is the plan.
Hmm.
What is the larger arrangement around that? Absolutely, in the marketing and the storytelling, I think they do a really good job of hiring, like, high-end photographers and stylists, and, the way that they do their merchandising and the designers that they hire are very talented, obviously, and they're using the same kind of coding around the way that they market their products, so it does feel very, very elevated. So that is I think the message, I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like the messaging is also a very, very important part of what all
Hmm.
of what happens for the customer or the consumer when they're thinking about what to buy, and kind of what is getting into their mind about, is this a fast fashion brand? Well, based on what the visuals look like, that's not how they're revealing themselves to be. It doesn't visually, that is not what it is being shown. It's something different. It looks high end. When you go into the stores, it's not, they have different stores in different locations, but some of the stores I've been in, it's just cleaner lines. You don't have like clothes on the floor. No, it's very, it's I have seen a shift in the visuals, the marketing, and what is happening actually inside the stores too. But um, I think that also plays into how the customer sees them. I guess is going back to your original question.
the thing you said that is my story. Like they consider Zara as like the very regular brand that they just shop when they have
Yep.
when they have, for example, salary, and they bring them some gifts for this salary. So I just want us to ask you that, like, okay, so if you consider entire brand as a fast fashion brand, um, but for example, in some of the like some of the products inside, for example, like I don't know, pants or shirt or something, they have better quality compared to the compared to normal quality. So do you still think that is like the fast fashion? You know what I mean?
Do you mean at some of the you were saying some of the
Materials,
shirts
yeah,
have better quality
quality,
materials?
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's where it gets, especially now, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where it feels like it's very blurry. So, if the materials and if the material is better, if
Mm-hmm.
the the ability to wear something for many, many times and it's not falling apart, and the person is actually keeping it and wearing it over and over, and they're getting years and years of wear out of it.
Yeah.
I think that starts to move things in a different way. But
Mm-hmm.
I also would say that we have to go back again to, um, what is the entire system? What does the entire supply chain look like?
Oh, sorry.
Sustainability and the workers and all of these sorts of things. I think that's just something to consider. But I think also if a brand is improving on their quality, improving on their materials, and actively taking steps to not uh, to produce clothing responsibly, I think that's what we all want. So that's a good thing. Um, I do wonder sometimes if it's a category by category situation, meaning what you said about the shirts. Um, if the shirts are using better quality material for whatever reason, there would definitely be reasons for that. But maybe the bags are all really cheaply made. The bags would fall into a fast fashion category, but like, women's blouses do not. That's very interesting. Um, and I'm not sure what that would look like in the business plan of the brand, but I do think it's interesting when that happens, and I would be curious as to, why some would fall into this category and others wouldn't. I don't know how often that happens, but I think it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, because now based on your answer, so what I'm thinking is that when we consider the fast fashion brand, let's say, so we don't only consider about materials, we also consider about the entire process, like how they made it, and also like some other say stuffs behind.
Yes, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, it's something to consider I think it's something to consider the entire process. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so
For
not only
sure.
materials. So yeah,
Yeah, I don't think it's just the materials. I mean, for me, I think it's
yeah,
the entire
yeah. I get
thing.
it because we around about this project, we really want to, because now we are focusing on material. So as the main thing that we're gonna show people that yes, material is very important to because it's affected, for example, environment, including pollution or some water consumption, for example. Um, but
Yeah.
we really want to see like what it should be like the further steps after we finish this step, like this current step, like materials things. So what should be we consider to continue this project to go, like future objectives, something like that. So that's why I really want to ask you these questions to see like, okay, so now, okay, after materials, which part we really consider to show people, like to raise the awareness of what is a fast fashion, if you understand my point.
Mm, that's very interesting. I mean, what I would say with the material, once you have materials,
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe to think about the construction,
Mm.
how something is made, right? Or maybe you could think about, maybe you could think about not just definitely part of the construction would be like the pattern cutting, like how a pattern for a shirt is made. And if there's ways to make that from a design perspective, if there's considerate ways to use design to be helpful in the process of making um, clothes, because I think all the steps work together to produce something. I think that's really interesting, and I think there's definitely a place where designers can use their creativity to make more sustainable fashion products. Absolutely, and that's a great thing that you bring up for sure. I remember reading about a I can't remember where I if it was somebody that I met or if it was a paper that I read about a designer using doing some research on different ways to cut patterns so that there was no waste. I think this is actually something that is very old and is a technique that has been used maybe in India or Japan too for different pieces of clothing. But I thought that that was also really interesting in the when you look at the bigger process of creating a product, creating apparel or whatever, just all these other little things that you can do in the process that would just make the product be more sustainable overall.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something interesting instead of, these are really big issues, just the idea of sustainability or having sustainable materials and thinking about um, how to make workers' environments correct and improved and all. I mean, those are all really big, huge, interconnected issues. And I have wondered if some of the ways to think about this to improve is through smaller things that we do have ability to control, or that individuals have a little bit more control over, at least on the design side. The customers have their role, but also within different companies who are producing products, just different things that your individual workers can do, the ones who have more autonomy or independence in decision making. I'm thinking about designers. Um,
No,
that's great. And I think a lot of them do, to be honest. But yeah, that's something to consider in the process.
How much power do you think normies like us have that are just buying clothes?
I mean, I would say that individually, when you just think about someone who's buying clothes, I do feel like when this is a business that is about making money.
Yeah.
And if enough people are choosing not to shop not to shop in a certain way, there is an impact to that. That's like in any social movement, that is the case.
Hmm.
Like think about things outside of the industry. Like there was a I don't know if you guys remember this, or actually it doesn't matter, it can be anything, but like when a group of people decide to not do something or to do something and they do it very intentionally, if there's a big enough movement that can have an impact. um so yeah, I mean, there's something about I think the idea of raising awareness is maybe the first level. And maybe when we say like normies like us, how much power do we have? I think maybe it's more of a conversation of it won't be quick, but maybe over time you're building like this slower, impactful thing that you see the fruits of that labor later, but it's not something that happens immediately. Uh,
What would you say the path towards is? Because I think one is making everyone aware of the issue.
yeah,
Unless all of us know that this is bad and we're going somewhere we don't want to go, like people are not going to move. And that is handled. The second one is probably the behavior.
yeah,
Yes, we are aware, but if we don't do something about it, nothing's going to change.
right.
Do you think there's a step three? Awareness,
Um,
behavior.
I think I don't know, maybe this is step 2A or Maybe. But what I had said in the little notes conversation that I sent to you
Mhm.
guys when I was thinking about this was that um, when I mentioned that book by James Clear
Habits?
and about habits and how people change habits, he's talking about individuals and like little things that people can do to change their habits. I do wonder if there is something that if you kind of expand on that, and I'm sure the sociologists,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something like that and they are aware of it, but I do wonder if there's something like that that would apply in this situation. So after you are aware of something that you want to change, then being able to take the next step to choose. But before you do that, for it to be lasting change, it seems like you kind of have to have in your mind that you have to identify with this new person that you want to become, this new identity. Um, and then once you have that, then, and I think that this happens I think part of that happens uh, subconsciously as well as happening on a conscious level too.
Mhm.
And then you can start to ask yourself, Kristen, is this dress that I'm looking at on Shein right now, is it helping me to become the kind of, the sustainable shopping person that I want to be? No, if I buy this today, it's not helping me become that person. So maybe Saturday at 4 o'clock, I choose not to buy that dress. But that's like my first step to becoming like the person that I want to be. And I remember it next time that I'm shown on Instagram, some celebrity that I think is really cool and I want to look like her. And so I'm going to go to the thing. And I think, wait a second, I didn't buy it last time. Like I resisted the urge. If I don't do it again, that's 2 times. That becomes interesting for me. I don't know. Again, I'm not a sociologist or a psychologist. I'm like, you know, but
No,
I just wonder if just thinking about his book and thinking about there's another psychologist that I like a lot, and she talks about perfectionism, and she mentions something similar too. She talks about changing behaviors and saying that even when you first start to consider making a change, your brain is already
yeah.
it's already moved beyond that step. Like you're already on the way. Just even by your brain thinking about making a change means that you're already changing, which I thought which is amazing. So
What is sustainable fashion? We didn't touch upon that.
we didn't talk about sustainable fashion. I mean, I feel like this is a word that is maybe like 10 years ago. I feel like people were much more optimistic about what is sustainable fashion. And it felt like it was something, oh, this is a thing. This is what we can do. And I feel like now it doesn't feel as optimistic anymore because people are starting to realize, understand how complex the systems are. And it's really hard to be quote unquote sustainable. So I guess I would say now, um, I don't know if I could give you a straight definition, but I would say that when you're thinking about buying something, and I don't always do this either, but just generally when you're thinking about purchasing something, to think about if it's something that would last. Like, um, is it, not just for me, but is it something that I could keep for a really, really long time and it would really serve like all the purposes that I had, whether it's a blanket or, maybe it's a blouse or a dress or something like that. Um, can also think about like to help someone want to make that choice, you can also think about, does it mean something for me? Does it mean, is there some other meaning in it to me? And I think when you feel like So we're getting into artisanally made product, which doesn't necessarily have to be price prohibitive, you know? So if you're thinking in those terms, and you want to buy something that's handmade or made by an artisan, then you have an interesting story behind that thing. You feel good that it was fairly priced. Let's say you bought it from a great local retailer that and you know that it was fairly priced, and there's like some sort of cultural preservation to that because that person is able to continue to be an artisan and continue working. Um, and maybe you take care of that thing a little bit better than you would have had there not been that story there. I think that can be really interesting. I feel like things like that contribute to more of what I feel like is real sustainable fashion, um, as opposed to like having a more hard hard definition around it, because
What
I think
are
it's difficult.
uh, just about the contribution, because I think it's very interesting. When I'm buying a T-shirt from a fast fashion brand,
Mhm.
and when I'm buying it from an artisan, what am I contributing to? So there are the basics. If I'm buying from fast fashion, I'm contributing to low-wage workers, probably, the microplastics that are in the T-shirt. Like, could we collaboratively make a list to raise the awareness?
Hmm, that's interesting. Yes. I wonder if, trying to think of what would be if you could have a real, like, tangible example. Well, I guess we can make something up. We can say, like, a
Yeah,
shirt
you
thing or
buy
something like
I
a
don't know, a shirt from Zara, and name a non-fast. What is a non-fast fashion brand that you know of that makes T-shirts?
I mean, it's getting really difficult even at the luxury level, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Completely
Um,
agree.
I mean, I guess what we could do is we could just leave it generalized. You could say this is a fast fashion, or this is a not sustainably made product for all the reasons we know, and we could list that. And then we have something that is, let's say, artisanally made, or that is made by local makers, local craftspeople, whatever. Um, when you buy something that is handmade or artisanally made, um, you are you are buying something that is made by a person. So there does feel like there is an exchange between the maker and yourself because it wasn't mass produced. Um, because handcrafts generally, because of technology and the mechanization of so many things, somebody who knows how to make something that is of the quality of which another person would buy it, like would genuinely buy it because they love it, not because of charity purposes, is pretty amazing. So your purchase is allowing that person to continue that skill or that craft and being able to make a living, or at least, if they do something else, they're able to live off of that purchase. Also, when you're buying something that's artisanally made or handmade, or a craft person has made it, you kind of have more of a knowledge of the provenance of the materials and where things come from. Usually artisans, they like to say the wood came from this place, or the cotton was grown in this country, and we visited the place where they processed the cotton. There's usually artisans, they love materiality. That's something that's interesting for them, and they are happy to share that with the person who's buying. So you're getting you're getting a handcrafted product that was really considered. You're getting a story behind that element too. And I think it's staying with you. Like, subconsciously, like that. The whole act is something that is really important to the experience. And I think experience for the human, when we talk about marketing and some of those other things that we've spoken about, the experience is so key, for why someone will or won't do something, while they'll do it again, like a repeat purchase. all of those things. And that was something else that I wanted to mention, and maybe we can talk about this later, but something else that I think is really important that goes hand in hand with the psychology of the purchase and um, why buying fast fashion or not considered fashion is really sticky is the psychological elements behind it. What ties to that is the narrative and the marketing. It's so the marketing is so well done, and so accessible and so widespread, like we're being sold to all the time, you know? And I think with sustainably made product or artisanally made product, um, that same the I'm not sure if it's the map or the ingredients or the way that that storytelling is happening in fast fashion or not sustainably made products. That doesn't happen in products that aren't
Mhm.
in products that are sustainable. Like they're not
Well,
using that same level of storytelling that they could. They have a lot of story to tell. That's not happening in the same way.
yeah.
So I think that's also actually a really, really big issue, and it's very much tied to the psychology and how people can discover and then be excited to purchase something that's not fast fashion. I mentioned this in the text that I sent you, the email that I sent you guys, and the note I made. But I feel like that's something that's really interesting and really hasn't been. I feel like it's under discussed when it comes to fast fashion.
Like let's take a person that has no idea about what fast fashion and fashion is, but they just buy clothes and they were not aware of the dangers. Um, what do you think are like the top 3 to 5 most important dangers that when you're buying something from fast fashion, you're contributing to?
Um, I would say the first things are, and this is very basic, but you're not buying the highest quality product. So whatever you're buying, it's probably not going to last very long. And if you're working with a tighter budget and you're buying something that is low quality so you can buy in the moment, but it's not lasting you and you end up having to buy something else to replace it not long, that can end up being more expensive than if you just bought something that was higher priced and higher quality. Um, so that's the first thing. It's a financial risk, something that you can get trapped into. Like, um, you don't think about it because it's so easy, but then suddenly you're like, wait a second, I've had to buy 15 white t-shirts because none of them lasted after one wash or whatever. Um, I think too, when buying like particularly ultra fast fashion or, any of these things that operate in that kind of way, um, the workers, I think as long as those businesses are able to continue to operate in that way, it it makes it really difficult to I mean, they can continue as long as if people are purchasing and their business is really strong, they're not just gonna stop.
Yeah.
So, I think when you're purchasing those things, it's important to consider the workers and the people who are making the products. I think that's really important. And they're very invisible.
Yep.
Um, I think the environmental concerns, of course, when we come to, particularly when we're talking about clothing and textile production, um, all the things that touch the environment and the production of, you know, cheaply made, cheaply produced textiles and then clothing. Um, and then what happens also, and this is really important, that when you buy something and you can't use it again, like the t-shirt that we were talking about, and you have to, what are you going to do? You have to you throw it out, right? You throw it out, and where do these things end up most of the time? And
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of reports about this for a really long time, where they end up in landfill, and they end up in different places in the global south, and there's just like mountains and mountains of textile waste, um, which is which is really wild.
I
Um,
think a good framework that I read somewhere is considering cost per wear, because like when you're buying it, and we have this in our survey that we ran, like most of the people wear a clothing maximum 15 times, like from 5 to 15.
okay.
And if let's say a t-shirt is, I don't know, 10 to 20 euros, and you wear it 10 times, then it's it's a euro per wear. But if you buy a t-shirt that, let's say it's a bit more expensive, it's 30 to 40 euros, but you wear it for like 2 3 years, and you wear it 60, 100, 200 times, then per wear it's like absolute cents, like it's probably
Yeah.
10 cents per wear. And it's a massive difference in the long term. But
Mhm.
short term, of course, you spent way more. You could have bought 3 fast fashion t-shirts
Right.
instead of 1. So it's an interesting math.
I think that's an interesting math, and I do wonder, just as you were talking about that, I was visualizing, you know, what that could look like. If there was a brand who was kind of just a more average brand. I mean, we can talk about bigger brands where it would be really, really, really expensive, and you're
Yeah.
actually buying an heirloom, and you've worn it, your grandkids have worn it, and your great grandkids have it. Great. Um, but yeah, I think that could be a really interesting visual image of the idea of, just really seeing that this t-shirt that you paid a really cheap price for, but you had to buy it multiple times, and how much it was in the cost per wear, how much more, like, to be able to visually see this cost you X, this actually cost you 500 euros actually, when this thing that you could have paid, you saved up and you paid more for, and you still have it, it's
Yeah,
actually cost you this. That's very interesting.
totally.
And
Also, what do you think about the textiles that were inspired by or mimic natural materials or processes?
I have I think it depends on the material. I like natural materials. Like, I think I have wondered, and this is something for the textile scientist, but sometimes I have wondered, with things like with materials that are made with, like, we've seen pineapple leather, we've seen, some of these veg vegetable
Corn leather,
corn, there's,
spider web.
cactus, there's a
Yeah.
lot, there's a lot. I think generally, the percentage of the natural material that's used in those, like, leather alternatives is pretty small, and then they have to use a lot of technological processes to actually get them to be usable. So that's what a lot of
Are
electricity,
you optimistic
a
about
lot
their
of
future?
processing. Um, I feel like there's something that could happen in the future. I one of the things that I think in this moment that concerns me, because I do, as I've mentioned to you so many times about artisans and the people who are making the clothes, and that's what I'm closer to. I I feel like before before we get too much into a new technology to do new materials that are, alternatives, is to find a solution for the people who are working today on the different fabric, like, who are using natural materials to make things, because that is already a problem. And I think it will be some time before there is an alternative that could be used in a way that really replaces, I guess, natural materials. Um, and then also at the same time, if that was going to be the focus, is this replacement of natural materials, to consider where would the where would the jobs and employment go for people who have been, processing, growing, processing natural materials. I feel like that would have to happen at the same time, or suddenly you have this huge group of people who doesn't have the employment anymore. So that's where I always get a little bit stuck. I feel the same way, maybe even more so when we think about lab grown diamonds. I I know it's different than when we think about alternatives to or when we think about nature inspired materials. It's a little bit of a different conversation, but I think again the electricity, the time, like all of those things still add up, and I just wonder if there is a I wonder, like, what is the cost benefit? How does that wash out? And then what happens on the other side when that replacement happens? But I think we're moving so quickly. It seems like there could be something that happens for sure where we have these new materials that don't cause the same challenges. But I wonder what happens to the natural materials that we have been using and the people who work on those too.
Kristen, thank you so much for your insights today. I think we've covered a lot today. It was a very insightful conversation, and I think me and Nam, the thing that we got from it is that it's a very complicated topic, but still an individual contribution matters. So we need to stay aware, and we need to still research about the dangers of this fashion industry. For people that would want to know more, we're gonna put some links in the description that Kristen shared with us. And if there is one thing that I got from it as a small change, is that it can be buying less, buying better, and exploring secondhand options. And each decision of every human can make a difference. Thank you for having a conversation with us, Kristen. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I think that was fun.